Right, thank you and welcome everybody. I think we have 40 people here now for this session, and this is a session which is sponsored by the International Federation of Library Associations. It's something we have been doing for several years at APrIGF to talk about community access to information. And
I think we have just lost Winston. We've figured out. Oh, I think Winston, your video is off. Yeah.
okay.
We have Winston back.
No, I'm back. Sorry. Okay. I don't need to introduce the purpose of the workshop. I'm sure you've read it. What I need to do is simply welcome the speakers. And we have 3 speakers here who 2 are from the library world in their respective countries. That's Geeta Thapa, who's a former president of the Nepal Library Association. And she's going to tell us about public library initiatives in her country, initiatives that support education and digital information access. And then we have Tantso Kong, from Myanmar, who founded Myanmar Book Aid and Preservation Foundation, which supports public libraries and school libraries across Myanmar with international support. And our third speaker is an expert, well known in my country, at least, and in the Pacific. That's Alan Strickland from Internet New Zealand, who is engaged in supporting community initiatives in New Zealand through Internet New Zealand, which is a regulator, a civil society organisation that works closely with decision-making levels in New Zealand, and also the technical community and the government information community. So without further ado, I would like to say that all of the 3 speakers on the panel have received a list of questions which I've asked them to respond to. And Jen, could you put up the EFLA questions for us just to show the slide? That's right, thank you. I've asked all of our speakers to respond to these questions and make a short presentation from their own perspective, from their national country perspective, responding to these questions in terms of how they see access to information playing out in their country and how digital inclusion can benefit, and maybe try to define what is a holistic approach. I won't give you my definition of holistic, but maybe you can give us your thoughts on what that expression means. Geeta, can we start with you, please? And Jen, you have some slides from Geeta, first of all.
Yes, sir. Now my slide. Please show my slide. Namaste. First, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to APrIGF and IFLA for providing me this great opportunity. And in this regard, I am very lucky.
Okay.
Now, the title of my presentation is Access to Information in the Community Public Libraries of Nepal with Meaningful Digital Inclusion Services. Now, next slide, ma'am. Please, the information, libraries, public and community libraries promote digital inclusion. How it promotes? Ma'am, please show the slide. Yes, yes, thank you, ma'am. By providing free access, people will have hardware, software, high-speed internet connectivity in their communities with the support of local government. by providing community need-based program and services in health and wellness, education, employment, etc. in support of local stakeholders. Now we can say that the community people believe libraries are emerging as a key community platform for digital inclusion. Next slide, ma'am. Now the digital journey in Nepal. Nepal has enjoyed incredible success in digital adoption, with mobile penetration exceeding 100%, internet penetration reaching 60%. There was an addition of 2.25 million new internet users in 2017, 250 new internet users per hour according to data to 2017. Teenagers and youth are key power users. E-commerce is still a new concept, but growing rapidly. People are embracing social media. Next slide, ma'am. Now the Read Nepal supported libraries. Read Nepal has supported, it has a very famous model. Read Nepal has library section, women section, children section, IT section, AB section, youth section, etc. Read Nepal is a non-profit organization established from 1991 from a rural community village named June Besi. It has established 68 self-sustaining community libraries and resource centers, till now reaching out 42 districts in the country. 2.1 million villagers have access to Read Nepal Center. Next slide, ma'am. Now the Manaram Foundation 2005 Nepal. Manaram Foundation, it is also a non-governmental social organization. The foundation has a mission to build libraries in all districts of Nepal within 5 years. Till date, the foundation has built 100 community school libraries reaching in all districts. At the capacity of those libraries, the foundation decided to jump on e-libraries with internet access. Next slide, ma'am. Now the data of libraries. It is difficult to find out public and community libraries are providing any level of digital services or not. Public community library survey is in pipeline. It is assumed there are 1,000+ public and community libraries in the country. Nepal Library Association submitted to the data to IFLA Library World Map in 2017. The total libraries were, including academic, community, public, etc., 8,892, and the internet access libraries were 1,332. Next slide, ma'am. Now the conclusion. Due to development of digital access information, developed cities has become almost library in the hand. Grandparents' library storytelling has become less interested to their grandchildren. People have become dependent on digital activities. People-to-people communication habit has been decreasing. Again, the importance of library is still remains. Next slide, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. Now, I would like you to tell us, in fact, what are, stepping aside from the positive facts, what are the issues that you encounter, what are the barriers, the problems, and what is your national association hoping to do about them? What solutions have you found?
Yes.
In other words, could you give some comments on my questions?
You know, for accessing the information, the marginalized people of Nepal are not accessible to it. They cannot afford the laptop, tab, phone, etc. So these resources are very gap for them. So the people who lives in the slums area, we used to say that the equity of the information in all level, but it is very difficult to reach the resources in their site. And the government has developed all their policy, all is in pipeline. And Nepal Library Association is always push the government to have all these digital inclusion activities.
And does your association have close links with the government?
Yes, it is close linkly, and we always push and trying to force them to develop our national library policy. All it is are in pipeline. So we always push them, and we'll always curiosity to help them.
And do you have close links with the education system?
Education system in education system, we for the training also, we do the volunteer training, and there are a national library, school library association. We also coordinate with them. Nepal Library Association coordinate with school library association. For them also, we will coordinate and disseminate our sharing, like that we do.
Thank you. And the libraries you're speaking of, are they mainly urban libraries or libraries in towns, or are they small buildings in the countryside in villages with basic reading material to help children develop literacy? How many libraries have you got? What resources have you got to teach literacy to people outside the main centers?
Yes, in the community libraries, in the village, there are so many libraries developed by, just like I also mentioned, the Manoram and Read Nepal. They are going to sustainable themselves. They don't drink one cup of tea, but they put the money in their collection. So they will sustainable like that. And there are some information literacy program also. The community center, they organized the information literacy program, and we library involve them to have the information literacy program. In the community library, the resources, lack of resources is very, very much. So if some library, they have only 1 or 2 computers. If some days run and next day it will stop. That is the problem in the very hilly region. We mean that 68% of our land is covered with the hilly region. So in the hilly region, that is the problem in the community library to access the information. Right, sir?
Yes, I see. And tell me, is there a library plan? Is there an information plan in Nepal? Is there a plan for access to information in a holistic sense across government agencies, or are they working independently?
Yeah. Yes, government has developed 1 library, one school, and 1 library, 1 village. It has developed the policy in the government, and the plan still has to come. It is on pipeline. We are working on that issues, so that if it will be success, then all the village, we do have 1 village, 1 library, 1 school, 1 library. That will be the development, and that policy is in the development situation. And we are working on that.
And is in the plan, is training for intermediaries included? Skills,
yes, in training.
Skills training.
Yes, training is also included in digital inclusion. We from the side of Nepal Library Association, we do use voluntary work. So we are very incapable to go in the village side. All the libraries are seated in the Kathmandu Valley. It is difficult to go them. So we will call all the community libraries and have a training, all the community people from Nepal Library Association, and they will disseminate the information in their community. We librarian from Kathmandu, we won't want to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Geeta. I think now that's very interesting. I think now we will pass to Thant, who will hopefully who will show us some visuals of the programs he runs in Myanmar. Tech.Asia, could you put on the slides?
Thank you very much, Winston. Thank you very much, IFLA and the APrIGF for invitation to this panel. It's my pleasure, and it's a really honor. Okay, let me introduce our foundation, because I think before I go into my foundation history, I have to explain a little bit about our country background. Because our country, you might know that the country was isolated for nearly 6 decades. Only from 2010 it was engaged to the international community. Then the telecom reforms were done only in the 2012 and 13. So there was a big. If you compare the mobile penetration and the critical thinking level, they are very low at around, like, mobile penetration was around 12% in 2012, and critical thinking level is also the same level. But in 2020, this is after 7 or 8 years, their mobile penetration is like this. It's like over 100%. But people still critical thinking level are still lag behind. So that was a big. This is because of the sudden jump of the mobile penetration, and the people's critical thinking levels are still far below. So that there was a lot of opportunity because of the mobile penetration. And mobile phones were before the price of the mobile phone, the SIM card was about $200 per SIM card, and it was reduced to $1. So it was a big opportunity for people. But at the same time, there were a lot of challenges because of these sudden jump, and people mind is the critical thinking level are still low. So what we see, the barrier, what we see in the community is that it was a big shift from the heavily censored printed media under the military government time to the information overload. Lots of information are available. People can write anything online, especially on they can write anything online, especially they're using the Facebook. Country population is over 53 million, and right now half of the total population is on the Facebook. So a lot of misinformation, a lot of disinformations are there on the Facebook, and there was a big digital divide between urban and rural, digital divide between gender. So I'm now highlighting that key important factors in bringing the success of the community centers. This is number one. We have to get this affordable connectivity, that is internet. That is very much important. Secondly, digital devices, which are very expensive. As Jida mentioned, some of our libraries, they have like 2 or 3 laptops or desktops only. But the good thing is that most of the people have these smartphones, So the third is the training. Training can be digital literacy training, digital information literacy training. We have been conducting constantly, starting from 2014-15, with a number of partners. We also conducted this survey, and this is a survey result from the 2015 to 20. We conducted a survey why people come to these community libraries. Libraries are located in the very far from the big cities. So the responses are saying that 67% of the people come to the library because they would like to get the latest news. 50% come to the library because they want to learn more digital technology, because we train the librarians to become our master trainers. So they are the facilitators, how to search the reliable source of information to avoid the misinformation and disinformation. Another 18% says that they would like to get job opportunities. So libraries, our focus point is we try to transform the community libraries into community centers. So that is our initiative, and so far it's very successful, you can see. And since 2014, we have only 55 libraries, community libraries. Now it was reaching to 210 libraries, which are all fulfilling all these three: affordable connectivity, digital devices, and training. And over 350 plus 6,000 people are using the internet for the first time in their life. Another 330,000 people are using digital devices first time in their life. So this is a big jump. We are very much happy with grateful to all our sponsor partners, mainly mobile operator. We partner with mobile operators. We partner with government ministry as well, and tech companies like Microsoft, Facebook, Google, and they are sponsoring us a lot, especially digital devices and training. So we launched a project. Second question is about how our foundations was bring about these. So we launched a project called Beyond Access, which is a partnership project between our foundation, Ministry of Information, and the APrIGF, which is the DC-based NGO, and mobile operator called Ooredoo Myanmar, which is one of the biggest operators in Myanmar. So Ooredoo, the operator, provided the affordable connectivity. For digital devices, we are able to secure the donation and contribution from tech companies. And training side, there are various training we conducted. Firstly, like 21st century librarian skills, leadership training for librarian, also digital literacy training to tackle all these misinformation and disinformation. At this moment, right now, we are now in the phase 2 with the Facebook on delivering the modules called We Think Digital, how to be a good digital citizenship, how to protect your digital identity, and so on. So many trainings are being delivering. I think we are reaching out to over 10,000 people at access today. And at the same time, we also partner with UNICEF to build the school libraries. Right now, over 300 libraries has been rebuilt and refurbished through the UNICEF and other partners. And also our main partner for True Library site is Room to Read. So we are the partner of the Room to Read also.
Okay, thank you. What have you learned in terms of, what works, what does not work?
Yeah, it's a good question, Winston. Initial part of our project, like Beyond Assessment, our project, okay, we go to the community centers, we deliver the trainings. It's more like one way. So after that, like that was around 2013-14. After that, we learned that, there was not much success. Once we look at the data, we found out that there are not much the follow-up, then the project might go down, the project might stop. Some of the projects stop actually. So what we did is in the future, from like 2015 onwards, we asked the community people to involve in the trainings. They become, we conduct the TOT model. So they become our trainer. And once the community see their youth are training to the other community, the people, they started to contribute themselves as well in their own way. Some of the community centers, they receive a grant from a migrant worker who went abroad, and they sent back money to buy more laptops, so and so. So we start to see this kind of success story. I see this is the ownership model. We have to give the ownership to the community.
Yes. Okay. And obviously you ask the community what they want, don't you?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we will pause there, and we will ask Ellen now to make some comments. Now, Ellen, you don't have a formal presentation, but we're looking forward to your thoughts on the role of Internet New Zealand in supporting community access to information in the community through your connections, I assume, with the Library Association, because I know you talk to the Library Association, but also with other civil society organizations, community groups, Maori groups, associations in New Zealand, and what you do to find out what they want from your organization and how satisfied they are with the services you provide. All sorts of ideas.
Thanks, Winston. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I don't have PowerPoints, but I'm really, thank you so much for inviting me here today. Obviously, we're Internet New Zealand. We run .nz, the domain name, but we're also a not-for-profit that's about working with the community, supporting the community to help New Zealand harness the power of the internet for good. And one of the really important uses of the internet is access to information. And I will talk a little bit broadly about the work we've done there, and then specifically about some work we've been doing recently around kind of policy and advocacy. So, Internet for All is, and digital inclusion, meaningful digital inclusion, has been a part of the broad program of work of Internet NZ for a long time. I've been there for almost 8 years now, and have worked across the different work we do. We do work with the community, as you say, with librarians and library association and library sector, and across all areas of the community in a number of ways. We have grants, community grants, and those have over time have gone to a range of community initiatives that provide internet access, but also skills. And I would have to say that, libraries have been really important partners with us and a part of the community in bringing about those, particularly for rural and remote communities or certain sectors, younger people, older people, that you see a lot of libraries active in those. Some other things we do are host events like NetHui, which is New Zealand's national IGF, because we believe that the way to have meaningful digital inclusion is everybody working together to understand what that means and how it can be best achieved for different people, because it's all contextual, really. And then lastly, it's about kind of policy and action that gets taken around overcoming the barriers to meaningful digital inclusion. So I think, the answer to some of that work has been that it's a process, and it has been about people understanding each other and developing a shared understanding of the barriers and what needs to happen to overcome it. We've been working on it, I guess, forever as Internet NZ, but in 2018, two and a bit years ago, we put out a commitment to Internet for All, to digital inclusion for New Zealand, and started a process of really putting a stake in the ground and talking to other people from telcos, from the community. And we also did another thing that I think was really useful, which is we commissioned some research with some amazing social researchers at an organization called The Workshop in New Zealand. And they are social researchers, that's their business, to explore, it's called Out of the Maze, and it actually explores through interviews what digital exclusion looks like in New Zealand and how it impacts people. And that was a really important piece of the puzzle too, to help people understand the barriers and the impacts of those barriers, to think about how you overcome them. So I think it's been a process that involves all of these bits at play. And most recently, we have launched this year, since sort of the COVID-19 phase of life started, we got a group of people together of all those different groups, that we've been talking to over time, to come up with, particularly those working in the sector, with a plan. What would be the plan for how you create an Internet for All in New Zealand? And we came up with what is called the 5-point plan for digital inclusion for New Zealand. And I will share a link to that now in the chat. And really it comes down to two things, although it's a 5-point plan. One is access and the other is skills. And, to hark back to libraries and their role in New Zealand, libraries have been helping address those things for as long as the Internet's been around, providing access through computers, providing Wi-Fi, and also being a hub for skills has been a part of it. Let me just share that while I'm chatting to you now.
While you're doing that, Ellen, can I just ask you?
Sure.
There is no national plan for information access in New Zealand, is there?
Not for information access that I'm aware of, no.
There's no information plan, no national information policy. We have digital minister, and I don't want to get into politics in this particular period of the year, but New Zealand is very good at aggregating together the efforts of individual sectors, but there's no overall plan, as far as I understand it.
Yeah, as far as I understand it as well. And actually having even a digital blueprint for digital inclusion is something that the government has only started bringing together itself recently as well. So yeah, it tends to be, chopped up. But yeah, so we have this 5-point plan, and we have gotten over 50 signatories in New Zealand committing to, which you can kind of read about, different aspects of access. And exploring making it affordable to have access, making sure people have devices, and then looking at those skills that people need and how you support new users, businesses. And another important one, I think, is about that longer term Internet resilience and making sure that we have the resilience and redundancy in the Internet so that people, especially in times of disaster, aren't cut off, is something that's quite important. So, we've done that, we've gotten it, and we've actually, as you mentioned, we're in the lead up to an election in 2.5 weeks' time here. And we are, as well as of the people who've signed, we have some of the major telco companies, we have a range of community providers, and we've actually in the last week just put out a call to the political parties to ask them to kind of join on. We have actually the Greens Party, which is one of our minor parties, mentioned the 5-point plan and proactively before we called out for it, which was nice. But we're looking to the major parties and others to kind of make a commitment to meaningful digital inclusion for New Zealand. So I think the success of that specific call is certainly something that we'll see over time. But I think, you know, my overarching comment around the success of the initiatives, and I've mentioned a range of them, is that it is kind of iterations, and it's about people, you know, understanding barriers, understanding what's needed to overcome them and working together. And that, yeah, you know, these kind of campaign that we're doing now is a really powerful way to kind of focus people on the shared learning we have of what can help us create meaningful digital inclusion and help access to information. And that hopefully that's a strong step on the way.
Thank you. Alan, would you agree, though, that although New Zealand's a developed country, there is still a digital divide in New Zealand? I think
yes,
all of
definitely.
the speakers, all of you three speakers have in fact emphasized that there is a digital divide in your countries. And I think from hearing what you say, that regardless of your level of development, it is very, very difficult to completely close that gap.
Definitely. And I would say one of the things to sort of add, I think is really important, is that access is something that you can pick off. You know, theoretically, you can solve access for people in terms of, but devices, making sure people have good devices, that they're, you know, safe, that they're up to date and working, is something that you're always going to have to keep working on. And it's the same with skills. And particularly, I know that mentioned misinformation and disinformation, you know, and security issues, that I actually really think that there's a risk that we see meaningful digital inclusion as something you can tick off and say, done, we did it. Everyone is meaningfully digitally included. But actually, because the internet is changing and technology is changing, you have to always be working at it, you know, with skills and new technologies. There will always be digital divides because of that.
Yes, thank you. Geeta and Tant, do either of you have comments on what Ellen has said about skills, about availability of devices, about the penetration of the internet into communities? Are you satisfied with the situation in your countries in terms of resources for those infrastructure, hardware questions? What do you have to say about that?
Yes,
Geeta, would you go first?
Yes, ma'am. I want to ask one question. In New Zealand, do you have all the resources needed by the community people in the remote village or on community areas like that? All these resources, e-resources?
Yeah, so rural and remote areas are still a challenge for us. I mean, less so than many places, but it was certainly highlighted, I think, with the COVID-19 shutdown, that they were relying or planning to rely on internet and connectivity for education, and realized that there is still, I think it's about 11% of New Zealand, and it's mostly rural and remote, who don't have that connectivity. And so we had to rely for education. They run 2 TV channels during the lockdown because there definitely, you know, are people who are disconnected.
Thank you. And another question. If you run the digital literacy training for them in time to time from the library side or any education side like that?
Yes, I think that's a really important part of, and hearing about, you know, programs, I think it's just as important here in New Zealand. Yeah. And as I said, because things change, people need to upskill and stay skilled to understand how to get good information.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Sant, have you got questions for Ellen?
Ellen, yeah, I think it's very good points that you pointed out. Actually, it's not a question. I just want to share from our country's perspective. In our country, a device is always a challenge, you know. Right now, the internet connectivity, the price is going down, you know, but the device is always a challenge. And then we have to be a little bit creative when we conduct training. So we developed a training course called mobile-based information literacy course. That means if someone has a smartphone, we can deliver the training. But it's not perfect. We prefer to train on a laptop or desktop environment. So do you have any similar training courses which is based on the mobile or not smartphone?
Not that I know of in New Zealand, actually. And I think I know another session I attended yesterday. I think that's been a big issue, is that there's a lot of assumption people will have laptops, and what actually people have is phones. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have another question to the three of you. One of the issues that comes up regularly in internet governance forums everywhere is the relative disadvantage of girls and women in access to technology and training. How is that reflected in your country? If you could just answer that question quickly, one after the other. Quickly, it's a big question, I know, but Alan, you start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does still show up here in New Zealand, certainly in some ways, that in terms of maybe, there's support and programs for children in general to get into technology and science, and that includes a focus on girls and getting them more interested in it. So yeah, I think you see programs like that here, although I don't think it's as big of an issue, but I think it is an issue at some places, but it's still an issue here. Yeah.
Yeah. Geeta, have you got some comments on that? Geeta, you're muted. I'm trying to. I can't hear Geeta.
Can you share me?
That's better. That's better. Yes.
Yes. Yes. There's some organization, Room to Read Nepal. So they give priority to the girls' education. So there is no discrimination between girl and boys' education. That they are working on that field.
Who is working on it?
The Read Nepal, Room to Read organization, some volunteer organization, they do work. The non-governmental organization, they would do work to the girls' education, they give priority. And the Asia Foundation, all these, this organization give us the equality of the girls and boys are equality, and they give priority to the girls' education, like that.
Okay. Sant, have you got some examples to give us from Myanmar?
Yeah, we have a project called Tech Age Girl Myanmar project, which we launched in 2016, and that is because of one of our findings during the survey. When we conduct survey, we found out that those boys and girls coming to library using the technology, boys are always 2:1. The ratio is always 2:1. So the reason is very simple. In Myanmar, for boys, there are spaces like tea shop, where they can mingle with their peers and they can learn the digital literacy with their friends. It's not a good culture for girls to go to the tea shop because the parents won't allow that. So we introduced library as a neutral ground, community library as a neutral ground to invite girls to come and train, to kind of learn the digital literacy, not just digital literacy, leadership skills, soft skills. It's like a 9-month program, and librarians become the trainer. So we have been launching that project since 2016 until now. It's been very successful. Working with a number of partners like Microsoft that supported us, and IREX being a partner. We received an award from the Seed Alliance in IGF 2018 as a Gender Empowerment and Innovation for Asia Award. So that has been doing very well, Tech Age Girl Myanmar.
Thank you. Now, thank you to all the speakers. Now, I would like to ask all the people out there in the audience if they have questions to the speakers. And how are we going to select from the questioners? Have we got any hands raised? Okay, I see Felix. Would you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Vincent. My question is, when comparing the digital divide between the three countries, the scale for comparison, I think, may be different. For example, New Zealand, when comparing their own digital divide, the point of comparison is within themselves. Whereas when we, to my perspective, I feel Nepal is far behind, and next Myanmar, though they started in 2015, 2010, and then comes New Zealand. I'm from India. I don't know where we fit, but there has to be a scale to really measure the digital divide, and there should be some specific quantitative metrics to measure the digital divide. And coming to another point which was very interesting was the 5-point plan of digital inclusion in New Zealand, of the third plan, which says wrap around the support for the newly connected. So is there any support for the already connected, that is the people who have the facility and they have the skill and they are in a position to identify the misinformation and they are always connected even during the COVID? Is there any sustaining policy or project to sustain the digital skills of those who are already in a better position? Thank you.
Ellen, do you want to answer that?
There are a range of community initiatives and programs that work on that have a range of kind of skills based programs. And I think, yes, I think it's an important part to have that ongoing learning for people already connected to understand changes, to refresh. I think that the focus in the 5-point plan on newly connected and also about jobs was kind of a gap analysis from that group who got together and created this, and that there are a range of, and not to say there's enough, there probably could always be more of skills-based training that supports users, across the board. And there's a range of that, right? So through the education system, through libraries, there's lots of ways that you can look at it.
Thank you. We need to find another person with a blue hand. Who else is in the line for questions? Any more questions from the public, from the audience? Okay, I have a question, or rather a comment. Hello?
Excuse me, can I have a comments and question? Hello, my name is Bhaskar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, sir, thank you very much. Very nice to see you again here. I am Bhaskar from Bangladesh. One of my concern is, we are in this pandemics, we are facing that information are not accessible for people with disabilities during this corona pandemics. There's thousands of millions of information are coming, which are not accessible for all types of people with disabilities. As we are highly dependent on the technology and internet nowadays, so accessibility is the biggest barrier for us. And also the affordability, internet are costly and the devices are costly. So the people who are in a poverty, under poverty or poverty line, they are unable to access the technology and information. So this is my concern, and what the panelists are thinking about that.
Thank you, Bhaskar. I should explain to the speakers and other participants in the workshop that Bhaskar was a speaker in the workshop on accessibility on the first day. And I recall that I asked a question of Bhaskar and the other speakers in that workshop, whether they were confident that if they went to their public libraries or their community centers in their countries, whether they would find enough assistive technology to meet the needs of people with disability. And many of the speakers in that workshop said that they were not really confident that the libraries offered services for people with disability, that is information through DAISY assistive technology, and even staff with understanding of the needs of people with disability. Do you think, Sant and Gita, in your countries, that is also true situation? Do you have in your libraries people who, do you apply DAISY technology? Do you have reading sessions for blind people? Do you have training for staff on how to respond to users who have disability? Gita, what's the situation in Nepal?
In Nepal also, mainly the libraries are not opening regularly due to the COVID-19 situation. So in the normal people also, we are not going to provide the services. So the disabled people, they also live far from the town or from the library. They are not close to the library. So it will be very difficult for them. Sometimes the public libraries are open for the users, and the community libraries also do open for the users. But it is very difficult for them. So same problem in Nepal also.
And Sant, what about Myanmar?
No, frankly speaking, we do not have a special service. We should have it, but we not that I heard of even in the public library or school library environment. You know? Yeah.
So what would be necessary to get assistive technology into community libraries for, because that's a major source of disadvantage. It's a major digital gap, isn't it? People with disabilities not being able to benefit from access to information to the same extent as people who are sighted, who can read. You know, it's a major gap. It's a digital divide, isn't it? What would be needed to overcome that?
I think we need more innovation. Some of the publishers, they started to publish audiobooks, so it might be useful for the blinds. But for Braille, for the blinds, I mean, for the sort of the deaf people, that would be difficult, I think. For the audiobooks, at least some of the books are available in audiobooks, you know. Yeah.
Thank you. I see. Felix, is that you have a question?
Winston, I think there's another participant also in the queue before Felix.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was looking in the wrong place. Sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Kyozo Lin, yes.
Yep. So it's kind of like it's kind of a broad question, but in terms of digital inclusion, you know, we talk about how important it is to have digitalized technology inclusion to people across, no matter who they are, what they are. But then in every country, I believe each country in the world have their own sort of problems that they're facing every year, problems that they think from the governing eyes should be more prioritized more than this digital inclusion. You see, so such as in Myanmar, let's say this year is an election year. So the entire nation's focused on elections. So certain topics like climate change or digital inclusion will not be a hot topic for much interest. Same goes to the US. It's the elections coming near. So how do we kind of, you know, make sure that certain topics like digital inclusions can be risen to the ranks, so that we could foreshadow that it's as important as a country's economic or such. So how do we do that?
Well, maybe one way of doing it is for all of the sectors involved in this discussion, the civil society associations, educational bodies, regulators, government departments involved in supporting the community should get together and work out a national information plan for providing resources and infrastructure and training and devices across the country, and make these available at at affordable prices for the community. Or is that pie in the sky? What do you think? Kyo, you asked the question.
I think to be able to provide cost-friendly services in terms of hardware or software, it's theoretically possible. Countries like in ASEAN, say Singapore, has a much higher literacy, digital literacy rate than compared to countries like Vietnam, Myanmar, or Cambodia. But in terms of actually implementing it, I think for me personally, we have to rely more on time and be patient, because we have to understand that not recently, I've done a little bit of quite small research before, and I found out that most of the governing individuals in ASEAN, they're at least age 50 years. So the decisions the country makes today are born back in 1980s. We also have to there's a big,
I think we have a connectivity problem here.
understand the concepts of how society working.
Thank you, Kyo. I need to move to another question. I see Ashirwad has a question. Ashirwad Tripathi, you have a question.
Thank you, Winston. And thank you everyone in the panel for such insightful session. So I just have a question for Geeta ma'am. But before that, I just wanted to point some comments. I second what Dr. Than said, because usually what we do is, I'm from Educating Nepal, a CSO in Nepal. So what mistakes we do is we try to, technology is moving so fast. So we try to take the marginalized population on same pace, but actually they cannot run with us because they're so much behind already. So my suggestion would be, yes, as Dr. Tang said, keeping them at the center and giving them some sense of ownership would solve the problem. But also, we also should assess their needs properly. Like, for example, when we talk about digitizing Nepal, we had our first digital framework in 2018. So when we talk about digitization, we're into IoTs and other big things. But the problem in Nepal is that the farmers are not even getting manure. So maybe we should also consider thinking that way. And the other problem that we face in Nepal is a language barrier. Most of the information available on internet are in English, and the urban population do speak English well, but the rural population, English is the toughest subject that they have to face in the school life. So they usually it's like a big scary thing for them. So my question to Geeta ma'am is that does Library Association of Nepal have any local digital content that is in localized language, not just few videos, but a whole course or something that a young child or a farmer or somebody could use the contents? Or are there something that's being done to localize the contents that are available? That's it. Thank you.
Good question. Geeta, would you like to answer?
Yes. Thank you, Tripathi ji. Actually, the Nepal, he is doing in many local language of Nepal, the story books like that. It's come from the radio and on the TV also. It is doing the Asia Foundation. Nepal Library Association, we are not able. Just only IFLA taught training manual, we have translated in Nepali from our BSLA project. So we translated in Nepali, and we do use to the community areas to how to make the library association strong. That only the Nepal Library Association can do. And then we'll do more. We are trying to do the more translation in Nepali. So it will be easy for the community people to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you. It is true that to provide to encourage, promote digital literacy, you need to start with basic literacy, and then you need to provide basic literacy in the languages of the country, vernacular languages, not only the dominant language. In New Zealand, I think it's true that there is a publishing industry in both national languages, English and Maori. Seems to me a basic requirement that you publish children's books in all the languages of the country. But that costs money. I think we need to conclude, and I would like to conclude by trying to remind you that the question of a holistic approach to equitable access to information is difficult. It requires government resources, it requires taxpayers' resources, it requires training at the basic level for all the intermediaries involved in the education system, and it requires good collaboration, good communication between the education sector and the shall we say, the internet community and the small businesses who provide internet services. One of the questions which has come up regularly in all these IFLA workshops that we have done at APrIGF is that you always need the platform of the internet. It has to be trusted, it has to be secure, it has to be affordable. If it is out of the economic reach of people in communities, it's very hard to make economic progress or educational progress. I think that is the basic message that we're trying to put across, that information services are fine, but they have to be done on the platform that is reliable and accessible to all. That is all sectors of the community, equitably. Okay, we have to conclude there because the system will drop us very soon. So I would like to thank all of our speakers, Gita from Nepal and Tant from Myanmar and Alan from New Zealand. You are all coming from countries with different experiences, different levels of development, but many of these questions are the same questions and they are susceptible to the same answers or the same technical problems maybe. And I would like to thank also those who asked questions in the session. We're always grateful for questions. We know we don't have all the answers. So please, finally, look at the chat. I hope you saw in the chat that there are some references to policies by Internet New Zealand, policies from IFLA and from the other participating organizations. I hope you've noted those down, but if you want more information about any of those policy statements, then get in touch with us and get in touch with IFLA also, and we'll try to help you. Thank you, and thank you to the technical support people. Thank you to Jenna and Frida in the background. That's all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Winston. Thank you.
Thank you, Winston, and thank you all the speakers.
Thank you, Winston, sir. Thank you. Thank you, and namaste.
Thank you.
You all.
Gita, thanks.
Thank you.
Winston.
Thank you.